Okay, so I think I am live and I'm 1 minute early. So um, we will see who is logging in and we are just starting. And this is the first time I have run a Facebook Live. So we will see how this goes. I'm very excited to be doing this today with Build Up Dietitians. And I am going to be talking about my business, Positive Nutrition. So I'm going to give a little bit of time since it's not quite noon. Some people are going to be just signing in. If you are signing in, hi Leah. If you are signing in, feel free to comment where you're from, what you do. I am a private practice dietitian, and my practice, Positive Nutrition, is in Marietta, Georgia. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I do want to give a few more minutes for people to kind of sign in, and then I can start talking about everything. At any time, you can type in a question. I may not get to it right away because I'm going to try to talk a little bit first and then really answer all the questions. But if I see something that I want to answer right away, I'll do that. But please be assured that I will try to get to all of the questions before we sign off today. Again, my name is Julie Brake. I almost mixed my name with my business name, but my business name is Positive Nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 2002. And my business is in Marietta, Georgia, which is Metro Atlanta, kind of Northwest Metro area outside the perimeter. And I have been here in the Atlanta area since 2006, with really my practice up and running since 2007 here. I started in 2005 in Florida. And if you want to find me on social media, I am on Facebook as Julie Brake Dietitian. And also my business page is, you can find it by looking for positivenutrition.net. That's also my website, www.positivenutrition.net. And then my Twitter is at Julie Brake RD. I do have an Instagram that's at Julie Brake RD, but that one is a little more personal. My business one is Eat Well and Prosper, and it's Eat Well, the letter N, Prosper. And I'll try to type those on the comment box too, so that you all can see that. Definitely before we sign off, I'll put that in there. And let's see, that's all I am on LinkedIn as well. You can find me on LinkedIn, Julie Brake. So kind of all my information is on my website if you're interested in looking that up later, but hopefully I'm going to talk through most of it today. I have a question. Do I know Sherry Collins? Yes, I do. And she's another dietitian in Georgia. And I am, let's see, actually, I'm going to go ahead and type in my information here so that you can see, well, I didn't mean to type enter yet. So my website is positivenutrition.net. I'm on Facebook as Julie Brake Dietitian, which you'll see, and then dietitian or positivenutrition.net. And then I'll give the others again later. So I have been a dietitian since 2002. I actually went to the University of Florida and graduated with my master's, completed my master's in dietetic internship in 2002. I didn't think I was going to be a dietitian when I started college. I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, but that track didn't quite work out for me. And the courses just kind of overlapped a lot with dietetics and pharmacy. So I ended up taking some dietetics classes and loving them. And there was actually a dietitian that came and spoke to my high school health classes. And that kind of piqued my interest. Once I started taking nutrition courses in college, I thought, oh, this is something I could do. I could do private practice nutrition counseling. And then I also had I had a friend in high school who had anorexia nervosa. And I had a friend in college who also had anorexia nervosa. And so my first thought was, oh, I'd like to work with people with eating disorders, which isn't a common first thought for those of us who are dietitians, but that was kind of what I thought of when I was thinking about what I wanted to do. At that point, I was in my third year of undergrad. And so started taking my nutrition classes, really loved them. And when I was matching for my internship, the University of Florida had the master's and dietetic internship combined. And so my boyfriend at the time, now husband, was very happy that I got accepted to that. And so that was a 2-year program that was 3 semesters, so fall, spring, summer semester for 2 years. And we completed the Master of Science in Food Science and Human Nutrition, and then got the dietetic internship as well. With my dietetic internship, and some of you who are students might be interested to know this, there were elective rotations that we could choose. And so one of the electives that I chose was pediatrics at the University of Florida. And then the other one I chose was sports nutrition at the University of Florida. So I didn't have an eating disorder rotation in my internship, but because I did those 2 things, and both pediatrics and sports nutrition have patients with eating disorders, then I ended up learning about eating disorders in my internship. And that was really great for me. Once I finished, I actually started out working with the WIC program. And oh, there's Sue from Ohio. So yeah, if you're just logging in, please feel free to type in who you are, where you're from, and as well, kind of your area of practice as well. That would be interesting to know too. So I started out, my first job was with the WIC program in Florida, and I developed my counseling skills really well working with the WIC program. A lot of, infant nutrition, pediatrics, and pregnancy and postpartum nutrition. And then once we kind of moved around a lot because I had just gotten married, and we moved to Tampa, and that is where I started my private practice in 2005. While I was starting my private practice, I needed an income. So I started to work at the hospital there, St. Joseph's Hospital in Tampa, which has a main hospital, but it also has a pediatric hospital and a women's hospital. So kind of working there part-time, I got to work the different areas of the hospital, which was really great background as well. And just kind of really kind of honed more of my clinical skills there. And then kind of as I moved on from there, I started to kind of develop my private practice. I was actually working with a weight management program, which is interesting because with eating disorders, we can be we have to be very careful about weight management. And so after that, we moved to kind of where we are now in Northwest Metro Atlanta. And I started my private practice and really started to focus on disordered eating and eating disorders. A lot of the training that I got at the time was just by attending conferences. I went to the National Eating Disorders Association conference one year. I just attended all of the webinars that I could. I read all of the books that I could on eating disorders. Now, there's a lot of great programming through the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals, or IAEDP, IADEP. And you can go on their website and get information. And there's also a website called EDRD Pro, which is Eating Disorder Dietitians. And that's great. And then I'll self-promote. I also present webinars now for Dietitian Central. I've been doing that for the last 4 years or so. And I have a lot of webinars available for sale on Dietitian Central as recordings. I'm about to do another live one in another couple of weeks or next week. And that's a lot about eating disorders. And there are a lot of other great webinars on Dietitian Central as well, or any way that you can learn about whatever practice area interests you is really great. So someone talked about, became aware of you on Twitter, and I gave a presentation on eating disorder and food allergies. Yes, I did actually. So I have a presentation on Dietitian Central about medical complications and eating disorders. But I also recently did a webinar that's available for free, and you can go look it up for food allergy research and education. So that's FAIR. And they are at foodallergy.org. And you can find the webinars on their website. And I did one about why awareness of eating disorders is important. So, and this is so my professional world and my personal worlds cross over a little bit. I have 4 children, and my oldest is 15, and he has life-threatening food allergies, and he was diagnosed at 14 months old. So I'm a bit of a specialist in food allergies as well. And then my second child, my 12-year-old daughter, was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes last December. So we're coming up on a year now of her diagnosis. But I did not specialize in type 1 diabetes before that. But now I have become somewhat a specialist in that too. And because eating disorders has been my area of specialty for really since I became a dietitian, there's a lot of crossover. So the incidence of eating disorders is higher in the food allergy population, and also with type 1 diabetes and with digestive disorders too. So anything that causes someone to have to pay extra attention to their eating is going to increase the risk for disordered eating. And it's just because you have to calculate things and it just becomes more obsessive or it becomes more restrictive over time. And people need help becoming more able to eat freely. That's something that I've started to present on a lot lately too, is freedom to eat. I'm going to be doing another webinar for FAIR about that, about how we can eat freely within our necessary restrictions and not impose unnecessary restrictions. And so that's exciting too. And I've done that I did that for the Georgia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics too. So I'm reading the questions. There's a question about business plans. Did I have one and how did I figure that out? So my business plan was in my head. I as soon as I kind of started to go into dietetics, I wanted to own my own practice because I wanted to have a family and I wanted to be able to make my own hours. The downside is you don't have a consistent paycheck. So you have to kind of know that that's part of the reality of having your own business. So I didn't apply for any small business loans or anything. So I didn't have to have a business plan. If you're going to apply for loans, you really need to have that because they need to know they're going to want that. But I kind of just knew what I wanted to do with my practice as far as nutrition counseling and networking and collaborating with other professionals, making sure I keep up with my continuing education. And then this is my office. I'm in my office right now in East Cobb, Marietta. And I basically just started looking for places where I could rent office space. And I got connected with the clinicians here at East Cobb Center for Therapy. Kira Ostroff is a licensed clinical social worker. She works in eating disorders and she also works for Ellen Satter Institute. And we have been collaborating and working together since 2008 or 9. And so might have been as early as 2007. But so we've been kind of working together, sometimes on clients together, but sometimes just as colleagues. And so I just rent office space from them and it works for me. So I think if you're going into private practice, you really have to figure out what kind of a space you want, what's your budget for monthly rent. And what do you need it to be furnished? Do you need it to be unfurnished? What are going to be your expenses? I did start out, kind of with different rent arrangement that I have now because I didn't need as much office space. Right now, sometimes I see more families, or at least parents are coming in with a child or adolescent. So I like to have a little bit more space. So to answer that question, I didn't have a written business plan, but I did have in mind what I wanted to be able to do with my business. One of the great things about being in private practice, and even whatever you do as an RD, is you can decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So, opportunities come up and I might just say, hey, that sounds like a good opportunity. I'd like to do that. Or I might say, you know what, I just have too much going on right now. I really can't do that. And that's actually how I got connected with Dietitian Central. I saw an ad on Facebook and I responded and ended up presenting webinars for them. And I do that on a pretty regular basis now. So it's kind of an extra stream of income. And it also really gets more eating disorder education out there for dietitians. And I'm going to see what we've got going on in the comments here. Hopefully my scroll bar got stuck. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. And then, yeah, so food allergy research and education. Um, and trying to think of what else I can share with y'all. Let me look at my note sheet here. Um, I I do specialize in eating disorders and disordered eating. I also specialize in family nutrition and sports nutrition. Sports nutrition, I just kind of liked. I mentioned I did that in my internship. I also, it's just an interest area of mine. I'm not a super athlete now, but I was a swimmer in high school. And that has come into my personal world as well. My husband runs ultra trail races. So if you read my blog, I have, I think, one blog entry. I might have two about kind of how I help him as his food coach on his trail races. And so that's been kind of fun to kind of see how the sports nutrition world really works with ultra endurance athletes. And so so sports nutrition, family nutrition has always been an area of interest of mine as well. And working in the WIC program, when I started working, that just became very much an interest area. I see it as an area of disordered eating prevention that, I can help families with balanced eating, and it prevents disordered eating behaviors from developing. I do use Ellen Satter's philosophies and division of responsibility, and she has a great website, ellensatterinstitute.org, and a great book. The Secrets of Feeding a Healthy Family is the one that I use the most with my clients, but she has other resources as well. And there are other great dietitians on staff with her. So really this, and the thing that I appreciate about Ellen Satter is that she has really clinicalized everything and done a lot of studies. So you can really pull a lot of research based on her philosophy of eating competence. And it ties closely with intuitive eating and mindful eating, but it is, again, very clinicalized and standardized. And I use those philosophies as well. Lately I've been using the term innate eating just to kind of encompass it all, because just over the years of my practice, I've kind of learned how to meet clients where they are and figure out how to just help them, like I said, to eat freely and really pay attention to their body's cues, get more in tune with their body's cues, and be able to have a knowledge of how to balance nutrition, but to not do that in a strict way that becomes overwhelming or obsessive. I'm getting there's a question here. The biggest food misunderstandings you deal with in your practice or online? There are a lot. So let's see. The biggest thing with disordered eating is people saying that, sugar is bad or fat is bad, or just really having that good food, bad food mentality overall. So I do a lot of myth busting in my nutrition counseling, really just going through with people how different foods can fit, how different foods can help their body get what it needs. Definitely going through dietary fats and why we need them and why it's important. I was just talking with someone today about how, our kids in school, even in their math problems and their science problems and their assignments for school, there's kind of there's a lot of information about fat being bad or sodium being bad or sugar being bad. And even just calories and counting, calories for a math problem. And it really feeds into what we in the disordered eating world call diet culture, and just how restrictive eating is just promoted. And so we really have to kind of get back to where we step back a little bit and get a big picture and say, hey, this is causing kids to be afraid of eating, and we need to let them know that it's okay to eat ice cream and it's okay to eat cookies, and that, yes, you also need your fruits and your vegetables. So, that's kind of one of the biggest things that I deal with is just that good food, bad food mentality. The food allergy, I deal with a lot of people who say that they have food allergies, and when I start talking with them, it's not really a food allergy. People will talk about, feeling like they just don't think as clearly when they eat foods with gluten, or people will talk about, well, when I eat strawberries, I just, I feel like my nose itches, or, just things that aren't necessarily a full allergic reaction. And so I just have to kind of really talk through that with them. If they haven't had it verified by an allergist, that's the standard. So, if someone's reporting a food allergy, it should be managed by a board certified allergist, and that's a medical doctor who specializes in allergies. And so that is very important, because these home tests that are available now, or going online and taking a quiz about allergies, are not accurate. And so we really have to, people will come to me with these printouts that have, 25 things on them that they're supposedly allergic to. And they'll say, but I've never noticed anything, but I just wanted to check. And I'm like, well, then you're not allergic to anything. So food allergies, the gold standard of diagnosis is actually having a reaction, and then a positive skin test as well. But even just, a lot of times now practices are doing what they call oral food challenge, where you try the food and they see what happens. So, and true food allergy is, a rash, hives, you can have trouble breathing, which everybody kind of knows about, but sometimes it's nausea or diarrhea. I mentioned my son has food allergies. There was one time where he was having diarrhea, and we gave him a medication to help with the diarrhea, and it didn't stop. And then we gave him his antihistamine, and it stopped. So he had some cross contact from something, and that was what was causing the diarrhea. So, we just kind of have to know how to treat it. And again, be seeing a board certified allergist. If it's not a true allergy, then we don't need to be excluding foods. And so those are some of the things that I mostly deal with. I do have a lot of people want to tell me that not everybody can use intuitive eating. And I actually looked up the statistics for a presentation I was doing about freedom to eat. And it's over 75% of the population, probably closer to 80 to 90%, has intact hunger and fullness cues that they can use. Because there are several things that can cause someone not to be able to use hunger fullness. We know certain medical conditions like altered thyroid function or type 1 diabetes can sometimes affect people, type 2 diabetes. However, if any type of glucose intolerance or type 1 or type 2 diabetes is well controlled and medically managed, then there's hunger and fullness in play. And so it's really about uncontrolled diabetes or uncontrolled glucose intolerance or altered glucose metabolism. And that is when someone might not be able to be in tune with hunger and fullness if just the glucose levels are all over the map or the insulin levels are all over the map. And then certain conditions like brain conditions where just the brain isn't functioning properly, then the hunger and fullness cues wouldn't be intact. We have disordered eating, which is, I like to use the analogy of the cue that we have to use the bathroom. So if you have to use the bathroom and you kind of ignore it and you say, I don't have time right now, I'll just go later when I have time, then you don't feel that sense that you need to go anymore. And then all of a sudden later you really have to go when you have the chance. But hunger and fullness is the same way. If we ignore it or we don't pay attention to it, then the body kind of just stops sending that signal for a while. But again, once someone with disordered eating is in treatment and getting help and support, then they will again become in tune with those hunger and fullness cues. So the statistics on even, disordered eating and altered glucose metabolism, those are only for the percentage of people that aren't getting appropriate treatment and support. So again, at least 75%, probably closer to 80 to 90% of the general population at any given time can rely on hunger and fullness cues to tell them when they need to eat and how much. It doesn't always tell us, what we need to eat. And that comes more from just an innate sense of like, what sounds like it would be satisfying to me. And this is, something that ties into eating competence and intuitive eating. And that's where some nutrition education can come into play. And we can just think about, I'm not feeling satisfied with what I'm eating. What am I missing today? I've had no dairy foods today, or I've had no fruit today. And really just having those foods that we realize that we're missing and we'll feel more satisfied. So that's kind of nutrition education, a little bit of mindfulness, and really just tying all of that together to get what we feel like we need in that moment. So I'm kind of looking at comments here. Cross contact. Okay, yes. can I explain cross contact? So with, well, I mean, it's food allergies, but anything else. So there's cross contact and cross contamination. So cross contamination is a food safety issue. So when we talk about using different cutting boards for raw meat and fresh vegetables, we're preventing cross contamination, preventing what might be a microbe from getting from one food to another, making sure that we wash our hands, those types of things, preventing cross contamination. Cross contact has to do with foods coming into contact with one another, and it doesn't have to do with necessarily foodborne illness. It could, but it has to do with part of a food getting on another food. And for someone with severe food allergies, that contact is going to cause them to have a reaction, whether it's anaphylactic or just some type of mild allergic reaction. And so for people with food allergies, if they go out to eat to restaurants, they have to make sure that the restaurant is aware and that they know how to prevent cross contact. That can be really difficult in the restaurants. Some restaurants are really great about it, and others think they know what they're doing and might not. So we kind of have to be careful and ask a lot of questions and talk to a manager and that kind of thing. And then even in your own kitchen, if you have something in the house that that person is allergic to, you have to make sure to keep foods completely separate and that they never even touch. And so in our house, we just don't have the things that my son is allergic to because he's severely allergic. If he touches a residue on a surface, he will have a reaction. So we just don't have, he's allergic to eggs and peanuts and all tree nuts. And so we just don't have any eggs or nuts in the house. We will take our other children out places, and we have a certain procedure for, again, making sure we don't have any cross contact. But that just helps us to keep our home a safe place for him. But he does go to school. He has to be careful in the school cafeteria that he doesn't touch anything else besides his own food until he's finished eating, just those types of things. So that's the difference between cross contact and then cross contamination, which is a food safety issue. And so, what else do I have on here? I talked about I didn't talk about size acceptance. So I talked about innate eating. I talked about kind of family nutrition as a prevention of disordered eating. And size acceptance is another practice philosophy that I have. And I use that term instead of health at every size. I know health at every size is kind of a buzzword right now. But health at every size does convey the idea that you can be healthy at any size. And of course, when I work with my clients with anorexia nervosa, I'm trying to get them to gain weight because they're not healthy. And so we have to be a little bit realistic about risks associated with extreme underweight or overweight conditions, and recognizing when people want to lose weight for good reasons or want to gain weight for good reasons. And so I use the philosophy of size acceptance, which means that with body mass index, I use that as a tool and as a part of an assessment, but I don't look at the BMI and say, well, this person is overweight, they must lose, or this person is underweight, they must gain. It's just kind of part of the overall picture. And I am willing to accept whatever size that person is willing to accept. And so if that person is comfortable in a larger body and isn't having health problems and doesn't want to lose weight, that's totally fine. And we have to be willing to accept the reverse for people who are underweight. If they are feeling good and there aren't any health problems and they're eating well, then it's okay for them to be thinner. And so that can be really hard for disordered eating dietitians. And I think that's something we have to really, that was hard for me, I think, to really come to that conclusion. And I think I really just over the years have realized that, everybody has their own body type and body shape and body weight. And we need to appreciate that. And within our lifespan, that changes, so I don't look the same as I did when I was 18, and I'm not going to look the same, when I'm 10 years older than now. So, we kind of, our bodies go through different stages, and we need to let them do that and pay attention to when our body doesn't feel comfortable. And, maybe we need to be more active or less active because we're wearing our body out. Maybe we need to eat more. Maybe we need to pay more attention to our fullness cue. Just again, size acceptance ties really closely with innate eating and being free to eat. Question, am I a member of any DPGs associations, websites or trainings that have been especially helpful? Yes. So I am a member of what's now the Sports and Human Performance Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group. Used to be Sports Cardiovascular and Wellness, and now Cardiovascular Wellness is separate. But so I'm a member of the Sports Dietetic Practice Group. I've also I just recently joined Nutrition Entrepreneurs Dietetic Practice Group a couple years ago, and that has been a good resource. And then Behavioral Health Nutrition is the DPG that has the disorder eating kind of niche in there. So I'm a member of that. The websites and training, there's so many. So I would say that Alan Satter Institute, I would say that EDRD Pro is a great resource. I'm not a member of it, but it is a great resource. IADEP is a great resource. And I'm kind of in some local networking things. So wherever you are, if you find a local network of dietitians, that is tremendously helpful. I'm trying to think of what else. And just the General Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I know some of us don't always agree with everything the Academy does, and that's okay. But I do think they do a lot to advance the profession. And I think that it's good to be connected through the Academy and the State Academy and your local group too. I haven't gotten involved in the Greater Atlanta Dietetic Association just because being up outside the perimeter, I'm usually at least an hour away from where they would have meetings and that kind of thing. Now, of course, everything's virtual, but it's usually just difficult on my schedule to make those meetings. So I haven't gotten as involved with those. But that, if you don't have as many constraints on your schedule, the local dietetic associations are a great way to network and to find out what's going on. For a lot of my continuing education, honestly, for eating disorders is from treatment centers because treatment centers provide a lot of free webinars. And so that is, if you're into eating disorders, sports nutrition, websites, the Gatorade Sports Science Institute is a great website. The Sports and Human Performance Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group has a lot of great resources. And that's another, area where you can get involved, just taking advantage of opportunities. If you're a member of a dietetic practice group, you can get on the listservs and, get emails about things. The SCAN practice group had an email about Drum Corps International, and I responded and I ended up helping write a nutrition handbook for Drum Corps International and performance arts. And that has been really cool. So just, different things that you can just choose to respond to if you want to. The other group that I'm a member of that has done a tremendous amount for me as an eating disorder dietitian is IFED, which is the International Federation of Eating Disorder Dietitians. And it's headed up by Jessica Setnick and others too. There's a lot of great dietitians that work on that. And that's at eddietitians.com. And so if you're in eating disorders, or if you just want to learn more about eating disorders, the listserv is very active. And there's a lot of great information on the members only section of the website. And really has just helped me to be able to network with dietitians really internationally who see people with eating disorders and really stay up to date on that. And then I mentioned at the beginning, I was talking about kind of how I started my practice and that there are definitely more resources now available than there were when I started. There is a lot more out there about being an entrepreneur as a dietitian. And so, the Nutrition Entrepreneurs Dietetic Practice Group is a great resource, but you can find a lot. I think the Academy has books that you can get. So I would look for that if you're interested in, going into your own business, look for webinars and things that you can do, if you are interested in starting your own practice. And I am not in practice for the business aspect. I just wanted to be running my own business for myself. So I don't have dietitians under me. I don't plan to hire dietitians under me. I recently had some dietitians ask me if I would provide supervision, meaning that I would just give them kind of professional support and advice. And I have been doing that lately. But I don't plan to ever make Positive Nutrition a big company with multiple dietitians. But there are practices close to me that have done that and have been phenomenal at it, where you have, kind of multiple dietitians working together. And that the advantage to that is that, if I don't have an appointment available at a certain time, another dietitian will, and we're all kind of working together. And then, if I have to be out for a certain period of time, another dietitian can cover for me. So it's really great to be in practice together. And then you can also have different areas of specialty if you want as well. So again, a lot of information out there now that wasn't there when I started my practice about running a business as a dietitian. Okay. If you have any more questions, please type them in. And I plan to kind of stay on for another maybe 10 or 15 minutes, as long as we can keep things going. I could probably just keep talking. But if you have questions, please type them in. Something that someone said I might want to mention is kind of what advice would I give for young RDs or RDs to be, or new in career RDs. And I kind of already mentioned, like, take opportunities as they come. If you see something that looks interesting and you want to respond to it, do. The worst thing that's going to happen is you find out more about it and decide you don't want to do it. But at least, get information about things. And if you want to do it, go for it. It is okay to say no as well. If you feel like something isn't a good fit, or especially if you feel like you're not ready or not appropriately trained for something, to at least say that is a good thing. I think a lot of dietitians, we get ourselves into trouble because we think, well, I know enough about that, I could do that. And I think I tried to do that a little bit when I first started practice, because I didn't want to turn clients away, and that can really get you into trouble. So if it's not your area of specialty, or you don't know what it is, refer to somebody else, or say, like, I'm sorry, I just don't have enough knowledge about that specific thing. And people will appreciate that. They will not be upset about that. And I would say, if you're a newer dietitian, it's great if you know what you do want to do. It's okay if you don't. Just kind of, I do feel like being in the clinical world helped me a lot. I also worked PRN at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta at Scottish Rite when I moved to the Atlanta area. And that, I think, really helped me tremendously, just with clinical skills and assessment skills. And even kind of talking to parents with kids that are really sick. Just having those skills. And I didn't want to work in the clinical world when I went through my internship. I kind of did it to get through, but I do appreciate that experience, and I think that it's a great way to have a good income, have whatever else you need, and then if you want to start working on or thinking about a private practice, you can do that at the same time. You just have to be careful about conflicts of interest. I had a wonderful dietitian at Children's at Scottish Rite who said to me, you have to be careful about conflicts of interest, because I had my private practice at the time. And I needed that reminder, because the lines can get very blurry sometimes when you're working for multiple agencies. And so you have to just really ask someone else if you're not sure, and make sure that you're not engaging in conflicts of interest. And then I would say, in my world of counseling clients, one of the most important things that I want to do is tell them the truth. Sometimes I have to tell people things that they do not want to hear. And I have to be very compassionate and gentle about that. But if we try to tell our clients what we think they want to hear because we want them to like us, or we don't tell them things because we're afraid they're not going to like us, again, that could just get us really into trouble. And when you tell people, when you're honest with people and you tell them the reality of the situation, they are going to appreciate that too. And so as a professional, I've just found that has being honest and open with people, and really just sharing with them what I know that they need to hear, even if they don't want to hear it. That has been what's helped me as a professional with my clients and with other colleagues as well. And trying to think of what else. Also, young RDs or new RDs, ask for help, reach out to dietitians. I've had so many students just reach out to me saying, oh, I found you on the Academy website, or I saw you on Facebook, or whatever it is. And I know not all dietitians will respond because some people just get overwhelmed and busy and they really just can't, but someone will. So reach out to people, ask questions. I always try to take time for students because I just remember being a student, even though it was a while ago. I remember just needing that expertise and professional support. And so, and dietitians, those of you who have been in practice for a while, please remember that the students still need us. They need preceptors, and they just need people to give them answers to their questions and help encourage them and help them figure things out as they start their career paths as dietitians. And so that is another area that I would encourage you. And then the best and most frustrating parts of my job. Best parts of my job is that I get to work with people. I love people. And it's hard for me. These virtual formats are hard for me. I have to kind of just imagine that you're sitting across the table from me and we're having a conversation. But I just really love people and love working with people. And it's rewarding to me to see when people accomplish their goals and when people just feel better in life in general. And so that has, especially when it's just, I see people of all different ages. And so when you see a child's, just getting healthier and the parents not being anxious and stressed anymore, that's rewarding. And then when you have someone who's older and further along in life that maybe thought they weren't worth it, to see them work on something and just increase their confidence is really rewarding too. And then most frustrating parts of my job. I think as a dietitian, and I don't know if any of you who are dietitians have come across this, but I feel like people don't understand my level of training. And so they will not necessarily take my recommendations as seriously. And that is frustrating to me sometimes, especially if someone says, well, the doctor told me this, and they'll follow exactly what the doctor tells them. But then when I'm telling them, oh, well, let's work on this, and, I think we should follow up in 2 weeks, or, they're kind of like, well, can I follow up in, 2 months? And they wouldn't say that to the doctor if the doctor said follow up in 2 weeks. So I think that's a struggle for me. And I get frustrated with that sometimes. It's just people not understanding why I guess where I'm coming from as far as what I'm recommending and why I'm recommending it. And so that can be hard. And I think a lot of people just don't know what dietitians do. I usually take an opportunity when I have a new client to say, have you ever worked with a dietitian before? Let me tell you what I do, because I want them to tell other people. And I want people to understand that dietitians are nutrition experts and that we're healthcare professionals, and we really have a lot of education and training behind our credential. So yeah, I think that's probably mostly it. And I guess personally, I get frustrated that I don't have enough time to do all the things I might want to do. I have wanted to publish a book and I don't have enough time for that. So, maybe when I retire, I'll have enough time to write my books. But I end up, like I said, my professional world and my personal world cross over a lot. I've done a lot of allergy-friendly baking with my son. And so I'd love to put together a cookbook one day, but that has not happened yet. So, and you can, everyone has a different way that they approach their practice or their professional world. You can keep it completely separate from your personal world. But usually there is some crossover. Those of us that are dietitians usually love food. And so we can get into culinary aspects. We can get into, really kind of networking around food and that kind of thing too. So trying to see what else is here. Size acceptance, yeah. I can't remember where I got that term. I want to say I didn't come up with it on my own, but I know I've been using it for a while. Yeah, and one of the things I think, we know there's a lot of misinformation out there about nutrition, about dietitians, about science, and we really have to just step back and try to have an objective mind about it. Kind of recognize our personal perspective and how that can cloud our professional perspective sometimes. I know that happened with me and my daughter when she was starting to show kind of signs of diabetes. I first thought eating issues and eating disorder, because that's what I work with most of the time. And I kind of missed some of her early signs. So I think, we just have to be careful about, the word bias is out there a lot. I don't necessarily know that it's being biased. It's certainly not intentional for the most part for most of us, but it's more of just we have our own personal backgrounds and our personal stories that affect how we view things. And we have to make sure that when we're looking at science that we just stay as objective as possible. Look at the data, look at the research. I recommend when you're reading a study to actually read the research and the results before you read the conclusions, because the conclusions are what the author pulled from the results. It's not necessarily what the results say. It should be, but it's not always. And so, we just kind of have to really have a good scientific mind about that and promote science as dietitians and be evidence-based as much as we can. There's a lot of nuance to nutrition counseling and figuring out what works well for people and taking experience and using that as well. But it should be evidence-based. Our recommendations should be evidence-based. Over time, over the years, really the food groups and getting enough nutrition from the food groups has been what is most successful in getting the human body the nutrition it needs. And so, kind of relying on these other methods that come into play and that are researched, the more that you read about them, they're not really effective and sustainable long-term. So it looks like we're going to be winding down. If anybody else has any questions or comments, please type them in. I'm going to go ahead and give my information again. Once again, my name is Julie Brake. My business is Positive Nutrition in Marietta, Georgia. And my website is positivenutrition.net. I'm on Facebook as Julie Brake-dietitian and also positivenutrition.net for my business page. I am on Twitter as @JulieBrakeRD. And that my Twitter is a little mixed professional and personal, but I kind of have a little more fun on Twitter than I do on Facebook. My business stays pretty business-like. And then Instagram, I'm also on as well. That's a little bit newer. So kind of skeptical about sharing that, but and my business page is Eat Well and Prosper. So it's Eat Well, the letter N, Prosper. And my hashtag is Eat Well and Prosper. So Eat Well and Prosper spelled out. If you use that hashtag on any social media, you'll find some of my nutrition tips and posts because I usually use that when I post things on social media. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And like I mentioned, I have presentations on Dietitian Central. You can look those up as well. And that free presentation on the Food Allergy Research and Education website is there too if you're interested in that. So I appreciate all of you. I'm probably going to just go ahead and wrap it up. We've been 45 minutes in. And if anyone else, like I said, last minute questions, feel free to type them in. Thankful for the people that joined in today. And if you are listening to this as a recording, please feel free to find me on my website or on social media and contact me and ask me questions or just reach out if there's any way that I can help you, or if you just want to connect as a fellow dietitian or whatever it is, or if you're a student, I'm happy to help you as well. So hope you all have a great day, and thank you for listening and watching.